You have to turn off the record manually when you're playing a record, of course. Or with this turntable anyway, it doesn't have an automatic um, pickup. Um, no, it wouldn't be called a pickup, an automatic. Oh dear me. Return, end of play system. Would be much more convenient actually to have a more modern turntable rather than this esoteric old one, but it doesn't matter. I'm not even sure that it's set up properly, or perhaps the cartridge isn't suitable. But cartridges can cost £500. Even a cheap one's going to cost probably £100, and maybe it will sound worse. How much money do you have to follow this in an interest in these things? But since I decided to curtail my pipe smoking, I've decided to divert some of the money that I've saved into buying some LPs, because I only have three currently, and one is the one that I'm listening to now, which is my favorite, which is some kind of I don't know what sort of music it is. I just asked for the advice of the guy in the shop, and he sold me this record. Oops. Subliminal Soul by Don Carlos Unlimited. I have no idea what that all means, but I like the sound, and so I'll go back and ask him if he's got any more of that kind of stuff. Just nice sounds, and I don't really want to know anything more about it than that. That'd be cool. So that's the plan moving forward. And I'm thinking about why people try to get ahead in life, or why people try to climb the social ladder. I think it's quite a common thing that people try to do. I don't know whether everybody's at it, but I've certainly, people that I know very well in my family and all the rest of it have followed that kind of practice, I suppose. Or maybe it's just struggling to remain at your in your current class, the class system. Could it be that there is such a thing as a class system probably in all countries, and the higher your perceived level in the class system, the more money you're going to need to maintain yourself at that level. I remember my Italian art dealer friend um, who walked in a very shadowy world, the one that Lot escaped from or was taken out from. He was a charming fellow who now passed on, very clever and very sensitive to artistic matters, which I like. I'm also I'm very interested in artistic expression. I've always enjoyed it in one form or another, although not exclusively all artistic expression, of course. Not that. But he maintained, the reason I'm mentioning him is because of the circles in which he moved or wished to move or had to move, and probably because of his personal tastes as well, some of which I share. He had he would only have expensive cars that he couldn't afford. So he used to drive a Rover. Oh, I forget what it's called. Is it the P100? No, the 1970s 2 litre and 3.8 litre Rover. They were great looking cars, I thought. Quite big. Quick also, I think the 3.8. But notoriously expensive to maintain, and you know, incorporating a lot of design flaws and corrosion problems. Very few of them survive today, sadly. The police used to use them. So that's the car that he had, or previous to that, he had a Saab at the time when Saab was still making cars. I think they were. And he could hardly afford the bus fare actually, but he lived on credit. He just had to have a certain level of money flowing through. And he had to maintain his gallery, which is in a very expensive part of Rome. And that's what he did. Or my girlfriend in England was from quite a wealthy family. And I always remember her brother, who was as poor as a church mouse in his actual life, lived on in a rented cottage, but probably now is very wealthy. But he vied for the opportunity to go on a shoot with the Prince of Wales, would be the current king, or with his cohorts. And so, although he had nothing, he had to buy a shotgun, and you couldn't just buy any shotgun. It had to be suitable for that setting. So it was going to cost thousands, many thousands. And so it was. There are certain things you had to do to keep into that set, to keep up with that set. But there are other people who want to be upwardly mobile and climb through the ranks of society. I find that odd. I can't understand when you look at the higher ranks of society, why you would want to be amongst them or to climb amongst them. But if you think it's nicer to live in a certain place than another one, of course you will be obliged to do that, because I'm sure that in America the Hamptons is one of the nicest places to live in terms of surroundings and weather and all the rest of it. I'm not quite sure, but the very wealthy people do tend to live in very pleasant places. Is that what it is? I was watching a video about a mansion, an abandoned mansion, abandoned by a British comedian who passed on. And he was very popular and very successful. And this property was just the usual sort of sumptuous property that you would build for yourself if you had enough money, I suppose. There was the indoor pool and the summer house and the ornate gardens and general space and pleasantness and privacy and many features, I'm sure, that this gentleman enjoyed living there. But he ended up, as we all will, as food for worms. You die and all that is removed. It's not enduring at all. It's just worldly conceit. You can build yourself things and make yourself comfortable. But though it was very sad to see the end result of his life. He had his initials on the gates. They were wrought iron gates, and the initials were worked into the pattern. Probably had some very nice cars in the drive. It had been empty for about 8 or 9 years, I think. Just valuable real estate that will be sold someday and demolished, presumably, or renovated as the next aspiring wealthy person moves in. But I think we might have come to the end of that now, because somehow it's all, the bottom's dropped out, as the singing postman used to say. The bottom's dropped out of everything. And so is it called fatuity or fatuousness of certain lifestyle choices, I think, are just increasingly evident. People will climb over one another. Some people will climb over one another for advancement. They seek recognition. They need recognition. And so, beautiful house, many houses, fine clothing, expensive accessories, cars, all the rest of it. That becomes just important to them, I suppose. Where do you stop? Private plane. A yacht, like Maxwell, a tormented man. Tormented, apparently. Now, and I reflect on the fact that I knew the current Earl of a very great and prestigious estate in this country. And I knew him when he was probably 16 years of age, because he lived in the house next door to me as a squatter, and he'd abandoned his royal family or aristocratic family. But it was only a temporary abandonment, of course, because you can't escape those sorts of things. His sister also lived alongside, and she was a lady. I don't think he had any letters after his name or anything like that at that time, but he was too young. He told us all about his important family, but it seemed so remote. But he did eventually become the Earl. And so today he's going to be, extraordinarily wealthy and privileged if he wishes to take advantage of those things. But he was a nice fellow. I liked him a lot. And he had a measure of understanding, as people do. And I'd just be very interested to know how it's all turned out for him. He didn't have to climb the social ladders because he was already at the top. Those families already occupy places of considerable prestige, attracting the envy of many, sometimes unjustifiably. Sometimes they can be they can lose their coin and have to live rather humbly, which is interesting. I remember I visited with my wife a local manor house in the south of England. It was, I forget which one, and it was the lord and lady of the manor that were working there and taking tickets and selling tea. And my wife was very tickled about this. I'd never seen any such thing, but they were clearly, they'd fallen on hard times, and the house was magnificent and huge. So they had decided to start accepting visitors in the very early days, and they were running it themselves. I'm sure it's been sold on to the wicked National Trust organization now, or some other mostly those places fall into the heritage agencies, which I hate. Much rather keep things in private hands, surely. So it's a strange old world. I can't really sympathize with the people who want to climb the social ladder, because they will clamber on other people's backs to do it. I think that's how you have to do that thing. And it fuels this money system where money really is the only thing that counts. And that's why we're all in such a state at the moment, in practical terms. Of course, the money is the only thing that counts, whereas it replaces God. Because you can't love the one, or you will hate the other. So if you love the money, you will hate God. It just seems to be, it's axiomatic and it's biblical. But if you love God sincerely, you're going to hate the money. Not the coin, but the whole system is going to be hateful and reprehensible to you. That's what needs to change. Let's stop chasing after this money and be content to live peaceably among one another. God bless this morning.